Yeah.
Hey guys, welcome to the first mental health podcast. Super excited to be working with my friend Haley here. We're going to be covering the topic of ADHD to some really chill music and just hanging out and having a hopefully potential meaningful discussion about attention deficit, hyperactivity disorder, and attention deficit disorder. I'm actually going to take this time and let Haley introduce herself.
Oh, so nerve-wracking. Thanks, Adam. I'm a story and life coach with a focus on mental health and mental wellness, trauma-informed coaching. I've known Adam for a little while now, and when he mentioned this podcast, videocast idea, I loved it, and I'm just so excited to facilitate this conversation with him and see where it goes today.
Yeah, a long time actually. I think prior to 2010.
Yeah.
Wow, it's been a minute. Oh, the days of trying to put together concerts and benefits with YouTube artists.
What are those?
So
Yeah.
I want to make sure that I'm being super responsible, and I am prefacing every basically episode with the following. I'm gonna pull it up real quick. So right now, especially, I know that many people are struggling as we find ourselves amidst the throes of COVID and everything that quarantines and lockdown and social distancing and self-isolation it brings with it. And I know that the struggles are not only physical, because obviously people can't be out and about and get fresh air and sunlight, and they can't go to the gym and take care of their bodies, but then again too, they're having trouble taking care of their mental and emotional health, and I think that's super important to say out loud, but it's also important to say that that's okay. You know, um, it's
Mm-hmm.
just it is that's how life goes. But please don't let any of the lingering stigmas regarding mental health issues stop you from talking about how you're feeling. Before we get really too deep in today's episode, I just want to say that if you are having thoughts of suicide or impulses related to self-harm, please call the National Suicide Prevention Hotline for assistance if you are in America. And you can reach them by dialing 1-800-273-8255. For those of you who are here live in Twitch chat, I do have a command, !help. I'll go ahead and throw that in the chat right now. That will actually bring up a Wikipedia page where you can search your particular country and find any suicide prevention resources that are available to you. With that, I think we can get right into it. Haley, today we're going to be talking about ADHD. I know that you personally have some experience with that in your own personal life, though we may or may not talk about it. It's more about how the conversation goes.
Yeah.
I personally was diagnosed with ADHD, so I feel like this is the thing that I have an understanding of. So I felt like it would be a good topic to, kind of put out in the world and have an understanding about, because it does touch other mental health issues. Some of the main things that I wanted to go over before we just have like kind of a casual discussion. I do want to talk about some of the ways that ADHD and hyperactivity are characterized. Inattention specifically is a failure to give close attention to detail, or making careless mistake at work or other activities, whether at home or in your own personal life. Having difficulty sustaining attention in tasks. So a lot of times you will pick something up and then maybe find yourself switching off more often than other people may. So that is a thing. I'm just gonna turn the music down a little bit. In addition, having trouble with organizing and basically just getting your affairs in order. The avoiding, disliking, or reluctance to engage in tasks that require sustained mental effort. That's a big one. Some of the hyperactivity ones, fidgeting is a big one. If you can't sit still and you're constantly tapping, that's a really big one. Being able to engage in leisure activities quietly. So if you're reading, but while you're reading you hum or you tap, that's a really big one. Interrupting people or having problems waiting your turn is another really big one. So those are some key things to look for. Later on, we're going to talk about some more specific symptoms, some things that are not necessarily more visible to every other person that sees you, but you may be able to see some characteristics or things within yourself that kind of identify that this may be an issue for you. But I think for the time being, Haley had some questions prepared that she wanted to ask me regarding ADHD. And so I'll answer some of those and kind of get into what ADHD means for me.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing all those resources. You mentioned that you've been diagnosed with ADHD. When were you diagnosed, and what was that like for you to hear that diagnosis?
Okay, so I was actually diagnosed twice. The first time, I think I was 5 or 6 years old. What I do remember is that when I was diagnosed originally, it was if I remember correctly, it was with like a group session with other children, and I think they were trying to diagnose many children at one time and kind of see how we interacted with one another, because there is a component of interaction that ADD and ADHD will have on those interactions, and they're able to tell more easily with more, I guess, they're able to be more sure about who has it without diagnosing somebody and then subsequently medicating them. I really didn't understand it at the time. And as I got older and I had to take medicine for ADHD, I just know that, it's right before lunchtime, so my teacher would dismiss me 5 minutes early, which nobody really thought about. It would just be like me going to the restroom or something, but the teacher would diagnose me like anywhere from 5 to 2 minutes right before lunch,
Yeah.
I would go get my medicine and then go to join everybody else at lunch. So it
Mm.
wasn't really anything that I really thought about too much because I think I was too young to understand the implications or the ramifications of the diagnosis. But then when I was re-diagnosed as an adult
Mm.
and then was subsequently medicated, I noticed like a huge turnaround where before I wasn't able to. Oh, let me turn it up. Oh, it's up all the way. That's weird. You can't hear my voice? I think they're saying it's for me specifically. Can you hear me okay, Haley?
Yeah, I can hear you pretty loud.
Okay. Interesting. We'll keep going and okay. All right, through the left side. Makes sense. Um so as an adult, I think that yeah, of course, X, I appreciate you stopping by. Um I think as an adult though, I was able to see where um that fixes it. I'm pretty sure I was able to see where the diagnosis and subsequent medication helped um, identify problem areas in my life where I was
Mm-hmm.
struggling, like specifically with some of the things I talked about. You know, being unable to focus or sit still, or enjoy leisure activities where I could just be quiet and be myself and
Mm-hmm.
really get into it. And it was really impactful to know that there was some way, whether it was through conventional medication or more holistic practices like, structure or knowing when to not have devices turned on or like
Mm-hmm.
when to not have things that might break your the structure that you're trying to build in your life around you. I think it was more impactful as an adult, specifically because I was able to understand it and understand how knowing and then taking that knowing and turning it into like action would subsequently
Yeah.
affect my life in a more positive way.
Could you explain a little bit what it means to be re-diagnosed?
So I mean, it's much of the same process. You go and you see a mental health professional in addition to your general practitioner.
Mm-hmm.
Or for those of you who are not as well versed in the medical field, that's just basically your family doctor. It's essentially going and seeing them, and they're going to ask you questions. And then, as an adult specifically, they're more prone to ordering other tests to eliminate other things. For example,
Mm-hmm.
a big thing is like it's basically like a delayed circadian rhythm thing, so you go to sleep later. But that like so
Mm-hmm.
if you're having problems and you're tired, they may want to order tests like a sleep study to verify that maybe you don't have sleep apnea. So getting like re-diagnosed as an adult, because as you get older, you develop more, you could develop more physical health issues than usually when you're a child. So it's a little bit more rigorous there. So,
Yeah.
so that way they're not like over medicating somebody and essentially giving them amphetamines. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
but more often than not, the doctors know that as an adult, you're more aware personally of what's going on because you're older, you have that experience, um, you're able to articulate what you're feeling and experiencing better. So as an adult, I mean, it was much easier and it made much more sense of like
Yeah.
why am I going to a therapist? Why am I going to a doctor?
Yeah, yeah. No, thanks for clarifying that. Because I guess I was curious since you had already been diagnosed, it's
Mm-hmm.
like, what other touch points do you have to go through to, like, how many times could you be re-diagnosed, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you were diagnosed as a kid, again as a teenager, then as adult, like,
Yeah, I was diagnosed once early on, and then I stopped medication
Mm.
and I did okay because I had family around me and structure. And then as some of those things began to break down in my own personal life, I noticed that other things became more difficult. School became more difficult, and I was a straight A student prior. And then halfway through my junior year, I started to see those grades start to fall off, and I could sleep through a class and pass the class, but I would have trouble focusing and completing assignments and studying for tests, which was
Mm.
detrimental to me going forward in life.
Yeah.
So
Mm. What does your day to day look like now? Are
Uh,
you and on your own medication now?
Currently, I'm not on medication. Unfortunately, 2020 has been rough on everybody, including myself.
Mm,
I can't escape that. It's been personally rough though as well, outside of COVID. So because I've had so many life changes, unfortunately, I've had to. I basically uprooted my life from one state, moved to another, and changed jobs a couple times, unfortunately. So once my insurance kicks back in, I will be going back to hopefully my primary care physician and like continuing medication. Currently, my day to day is trying to like stick to a set schedule.
yeah.
So I'll wake up about 10 minutes before work, and I will go outside and just kind of sit there for a second, come back in, grab a cup of water, sit down and start work. And what I've done is kind of tried to structure the way that I work in a way where I can have, breaks, like not one 15-minute break every, roughly 2 hours. But so I will work through a couple of issues in my support queue at work, and then I will take a 2-minute break and watch a funny video just to kind of
Yeah.
re-engage myself, essentially, because I know that my attention's going to shift anyways. So
Yeah.
if I give myself an allotted amount of time to shift back and then re-engage myself, I find myself being much more productive. And
Mm,
that's kind of my work day. I find myself trying to um, push through work and hammer out a lot of issues and solve a lot of problems as best I can, because I know that it basically just trains me to be a little bit more focused every day. And then once I'm done there, I will usually take like half an hour after work and just kind of, I don't know, lay in bed, lay on the couch and be a potato. And then I'll get up and head over to the gym by like 6 o'clock. And
mm-hmm.
then I'll spend anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour at the gym. And then I'll come home, and that's basically leisure time.
Yeah.
If the apartment's not a mess. If the apartment's a
Yeah. Yeah.
mess, then that's a different story. Then maybe we're cleaning or doing laundry or washing dishes or something. But
Mm-hmm.
that's pretty much the day to day, and I like to keep the routine so that way I feel structured in my day to day life, because that really
Mm-hmm.
does help ADHD.
What other advice would you give to folks
Um,
who,
who are diagnosed or not diagnosed, or both.
um, who might feel like they have ADHD but are not diagnosed?
So if you're not diagnosed, what the one thing I would definitely recommend is do not be afraid to say, maybe I need to put the phone down at 9 o'clock and instead read a book.
Mm,
There are studies that talk about how um, blue light and lights from screens and that will exacerbate the already problematic issue of having your whole sleep schedule shifted.
mm-hmm.
There are also studies and papers written up about the differences in brainwave patterns from an somebody who does not have ADD or ADHD to someone who does. Their alpha, beta, and theta brainwave patterns are shifted in a way that when you wake up, most people will feel awake. If they got a good night's sleep, they feel rested. Many ADHD
Yeah.
people who have diagnosed or undiagnosed ADHD don't feel that. They kind of feel awake towards like 3-4 p.m. respectively,
Yeah.
like to them. And then when everybody would be gearing down and ready to go to sleep and feel tired, most people with ADHD are basically at their peak wakefulness. And
Yeah.
so it's a struggle.
Wow.
It's a struggle, and that's why I recommend putting down the screens. Don't watch TV. Don't stay up watching YouTube, because you will get sucked into that, and it'll be 3 a.m. and you'll be wondering what you've done with the rest of your life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Um, do you want to talk a little bit about how ADHD is stigmatized in our community?
Well, I think first and foremost, the issue that I've seen is that there was an over diagnosis issue
Mm,
in the late 80s, early 90s. And so a lot
mm,
of kids were, you've probably heard of medications like Ritalin, where a lot of kids were
mm-hmm.
on Ritalin, but they didn't actually need it. And I think that stigmatized ADHD in a way where um, people were less likely to take their kids to go get tested for this behavioral disorder. They thought that we're gonna you know ground our kids into submission and into focusing, or we're gonna beat our kids into focus and submit, and that just doesn't work.
Yeah.
Obviously having a set schedule and being very rigorous in your day to day, um that is a good start. Obviously that's one of those holistic approaches that I described earlier, making sure that you're doing things at the right time, you're not on screens late at night. And yeah, one of the viewers pointed out, kids that needed it actually didn't take it, would or wouldn't take it because they feel like they might get bullied, because a lot of the times they
Hmm.
would split the full dose over two. You would take one in the morning and one in like around lunchtime, so that by the time
Yeah.
you got home, now you were ready to go to sleep. By like
Right.
6 or 7 o'clock, you would do homework and maybe watch some TV and go to sleep. So
Hmm.
there is that stigma as well, that there's something wrong with you. You have to take medication in the morning, or you have to go to the nurse
Yeah.
before lunch and take that. So I mean, like any other behavioral disorder or any other mental health disorder, I think that there is a stigma because it's really not known all too well.
Hmm.
And I
Hmm.
mean, and then also the two on the flip side, it is a known thing in this instance, like what it is, but not necessarily how it affects people at large, or it didn't then.
Hmm.
And so a lot of parents would take their kids in, and they were getting like prescription was being over, or medication was being over prescribed. And I think then that also led into people becoming undiagnosed, because now there's the stigma, um, of these kids don't actually need the medicine.
Yeah. 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 I can speak a little bit to like my experience with my little brother. And my little brother, so our family comes from like a Lao ancestry. So my parents are from Laos, and my brother didn't get diagnosed until maybe sophomore year of college.
Mm-hmm.
But he was struggling. As I'm looking back in his life, like he had been struggling since like elementary school to just have structure, to keep his desk clean. But then when my mom found out about his diagnosis, she just wouldn't believe it. Because like mental health in Asian communities or Lao communities or refugee communities are still stigmatized. She's like, I don't want you to get dependent on this pill. Like, why can't you just be normal? So it is a struggle, just to get the help you need sometimes.
Yeah, it is incredibly difficult, and you're right, there is among different ethnic populations, there is that
Mm-hmm.
problem of certain things being stigmatized or not talked about or ignored, and it is unfortunate, but it is there.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Yeah. Yeah.
how have you seen his life improve since he's gotten his diagnosis? And like, I mean, I'm assuming he's medicated now.
Yeah.
How many
Yeah.
have you seen a more positive change, or?
I have seen a more positive change. He is um, more focused. I think the only thing that worried me from the very beginning was he didn't have an appetite, and so he just wasn't hungry, and sometimes he didn't sleep too much
Mm,
for whatever reason. So those are the two things that was like a big worry at the beginning.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So I mean, I can see why that is. So the excuse me. So the most widespread way to treat ADHD through medication is Adderall, which is
Mm-hmm.
it's the what's the word, brand name, but essentially it's just um, it's an amphetamine salt. So it's like amphetamine hydrochloride or something like that, or amphetamine chloride. I can't remember off the top of my head, but um, unfortunately, it is an amphetamine. So you can draw comparisons to methamphetamines, even though fortunately there's two, like there's a major component of obviously the illegal class A substance, like a methamphetamine, and the difference between
Mm-hmm.
that and your amphetamine salt is that I believe with the Adderall you don't get this huge dopamine hit like you do with meth.
Mm.
So with meth, it's like you could say like we're gonna get into some touchy subjects here. So this is drug talk, right? So
Mm-hmm.
you have a dopamine level boost when you take heroin, right? And a lot of people will overdose on heroin because they want to ride that high. Unfortunately, meth is like 10 times that dopamine hit, right? But you don't have that when you take Adderall. Unfortunately, the only well, no, no, no. Fortunately, unfortunately, the side effects are yes, you tend to be so focused. Sometimes you may forget to eat, or you notice a decrease in your appetite. That is in the beginning, though. I think after a
Mm-hmm.
while, it does sort itself out. It did with me, anyways. And then if you don't, if you're not mindful of when you take it, I think that you can have that problem about not sleeping. Because
Yeah.
if you take it too late in the day, you're obviously pushing that sleep pattern back. When if you took it, I think no later than like 2 p.m., your
Mm-hmm.
sleep schedule actually begins to adjust and correct itself when you're on medication, which is, I'll tell you, it's fantastic.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, it's a wildly different life from when you are and aren't medicated, and when you get that diagnoses and you understand like some either pharmaceutical or holistic approaches to correcting some of the problem areas in your life. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. Can you elaborate a little bit on that too? Just kind of like how did you feel when you weren't
Right. So
medicated? Yeah.
a lot of people describe me as being more quiet, and I think it
Okay.
was less that I was quiet, because I was able to maintain the same personality, right? Like I'm very open with people, and I'm able to connect with basically anybody. But I noticed that when I was medicated and I was taking Adderall, and again I was taking 30 milligrams, which is kind of like, it's not your entry level dosage, but it's just right there in the middle. But I
Okay.
was taking 30, and sometimes I would take the full 30 in the morning, or sometimes on days where I felt I was having less of a rough day, I would take half in the morning and half at lunch,
Okay.
and make sure that I ate at lunch.
Mm.
But I would notice that yeah, I would be more quiet, but it would be because I was more focused on work, and
Mm-hmm.
I would complete tasks so much faster, so much easier, and I didn't have as hard of a time on my day to day. I mean, I would get home, I would be able to cook dinner no problem, and
Mm-hmm.
like make sure that my space was clean, like no trash in my room. I mean, like there's no trash in my room now, but like my desk is messy and there's clothes on the floor. Like, but those things are non-existent when I'm medicated. Um,
Yeah.
but also though too, there is when you're an adult and you're not treated for ADHD, it leads into other things. It leads in, you can develop multiple personality disorder.
Mm.
You can start to develop symptoms of depression, which can unfortunately become both clinical, like it will evolve into actual clinical depression that does become chronic eventually.
Mm.
Yeah,
Wow.
so it's rough. It is rough, but um, I think that really self motivation was a lot easier because I was more focused. I think my brain
Mm-hmm.
wasn't literally being pulled in 47 different directions every day. It was three. It
Yeah.
was go to work, do work, go home, do home, and then when you're done doing work and doing home, you do whatever you want.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, when you're, the time that you're doing whatever you want, the medicine has started to wear off. So your brain is able to go to places like, I'm going to binge Netflix, or I'm going to read a book, or I'm going to go hang out with friends, or I'm going to go, play video games. And it was a very positive experience for me. Although
Yeah.
that's anecdotal, and that experience may differ from person to person, but I really did feel like it was super, super beneficial and super positive for me.
Wow. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God. I think so many people are going to benefit from just hearing you say that.
Yeah.
Um, could you also elaborate on, you mentioned structure earlier as a
Mm-hmm.
way to kind of tackle ADHD without being medicated? Is there other things that you do that can help when you're not
Um,
on medication?
so it's very hard. You hear this whole pull yourself up by your bootstraps thing, and it's not real. There is no thing, but at some point you do just have to be able to pick yourself up off the ground, or pick yourself out of a stupor,
Mm.
or really just maybe put on some kind of music that helps you focus. I know a lot of people, and this is weird, I just saw this the other day. People who have problems writing essays because they can't focus, um,
Mm.
they would um, they would put on Mario Kart music, and because it's so fast paced and so
Wow.
frantic, it it,
Yeah.
it kind of like almost like noise canceling headphones, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Or the way that noise canceling headphones is sound goes in one way, and then so it takes that and inverts the frequency and then cancels out the noise. And they're saying it almost works the same way because it's so frantic. Your brain, I don't know why it was working, but there was a lot of people in the comments who were like, I tried this and it worked, and I thought it
Yeah.
was cool. So like, finding media or like background noise that can maybe your brain micro switches right between tasks when you
Mm-hmm.
have ADHD. So like, you'll focus on 6 different things, some like not simultaneously. It'll be one after another, but you're doing it so fast it seems as though it's simultaneous. But if you find some kind of background noise or media or something that you can have just just outside of focus, I
Mm-hmm.
find that helps too. I mean, structure really
Yeah.
is the big one, right? Because if you can get to a structure, wake up, drink a full 8 ounce glass of water, go outside, breathe and meditate for 5 minutes, walk inside, like you find yourself falling into these patterns, and it becomes muscle
Mm-hmm.
memory. A year down the road, you wake up and you don't even think about it at that point. Whereas, you know, in the beginning, you would have to think about it every day. You would have to pull yourself out of whatever you were experiencing or feeling at the time, and then go from
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Let's see. One of the viewers. I have a few friends older than I am that don't believe in ADHD, and there are a lot of people my age I know that are parents that jump directly to ADHD as soon as their child can't focus. I think the whole stigma part due to overdiagnosing is a big reason for that. Do agree.
Mm-hmm.
At least enough for someone to see you begging for help. At least that's my experience. I mean,
Mm.
yeah, it's rough. It really is rough. To not know what's wrong,
Yeah.
and but to want to know if there is something wrong.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of power when we can name what's happening to us or what's happening for us.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just like because we want to be diagnosed or we want the medication or anything, just kind of like that inner knowing just helps give you more clarity on a path to figuring yourself out.
Yeah, it really does.
Um, I have a question for you that might sound strange. I didn't really like flesh it out yet, but
Sure.
um, earlier, one of the symptoms or one of the things that you named for ADHD, and I've experienced too, is like my brother and an ex partner who was also diagnosed, is the interruption when you're talking to them, or like the need for them to always switch subjects. So the person that they're with who doesn't have ADHD feels like not listened to. But I would love to hear your perspective on the other way around, just kind of like how you want someone to understand you.
So it has been a problem for me. I mean, it still is. It is very hard to like knuckle down and button that one up. But
Mm-hmm.
I've been working on it personally while I'm not medicated, and I do like a lot of active reading exercises that you can kind of convert and adapt to active listening exercises. Don't be
Mm.
so ready to give advice or don't be ready to ask questions. Just confirm what you're hearing is a big thing.
Mm-hmm.
Just confirm what you're hearing, and try to keep other thoughts in the back of your mind so that you can bring them up later.
Mm-hmm.
It's very difficult, but I mean, I would want a prospective partner or a friend or a loved one to understand that that's literally just the way my mind works. And you know
Mm-hmm.
you know so many times I hear, this is depression, right? And you can't make me happy, you just have to understand that I'm depressed, and that, like, it will either sort itself out on its own, or it will take medication, or it never will, right? I mean, at some point I just want to be understood for, I'm a fidgety, it's hard, and I'm fidgety, it's hard to focus, I'll sometimes interrupt you when you're talking, even though I try to be mindful as possible about all of those things, but it's gonna happen, right? And there's no like
Mm-hmm.
ill will, there's no malice,
Mm-hmm.
it's just, it is what it is, right? And
Yeah.
as long as somebody could understand that, you know, like, the interrupting isn't coming from a place of being rude, it's just
Mm-hmm.
my brain, my mind thinks so fast
Mm-hmm.
that sometimes you just can't keep up.
It is what it is.
It is what it is. Unconditional love in that way definitely helps us love ourselves more. Yes. Although
Mm.
although I think first and foremost you have to find love for yourself, right? Before you even get to that point, there has to be some sort of like self-affirmation and self-actualization and self-love, right? You have to focus on how you feel about yourself, how you view yourself, before you can let anybody else and how they view you enter your mind. Because if you're not there, um, they could love you unconditionally, be the greatest person alive, for 3 months, 6 months, a year, but that first day where they have a bad day and something switches up, and or maybe they start to lose those feelings, it's going to wreck you no matter what.
Mm,
No matter what behavioral or mental health issue you deal with on a day-to-day basis, you 100% have to focus on your sense of self first and try to
mhm,
build a um, strong as strong of a foundation as you can first and foremost.
mhm.
And I think that's going
Yeah,
to be a recurring theme. As often as I'm going to be on here talking about mental health issues or behavioral disorders, or however often you are able to join me, Haley, I think that's going to be a recurring thing. Is
yeah, yeah.
self love, self actualization, and
Yep,
knowing your own self worth.
yep. Just that feeling, tapping into that feeling of being grounded and unshakable, and building your vessel so that no matter what happens around you, you are solid.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that solid is full of love.
Mm-hmm.
As cheesy as that sounds,
Yeah,
but
you're the best maintained machine on the assembly line. So when everything else is falling around you, the warehouse is burning down, they're able to pull that one machine out and put it in the new warehouse, right? I will agree though that some like having somebody next to you while you work on yourself is 10 times better. It
hmm
is nice as much as you should, obviously work on your own affirmation and you should affirm yourself on a day to day basis. It is nice sometimes to have somebody, give you affirmations. So
yeah, that's why it's so important to build that circle of trust.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Currently, I am doing it on my own, and it is difficult. I'm gonna be 100% honest. There are days I wake up and I feel pretty depressed. Or I don't know if it's depression so much so as it's like a deep and profound sadness because I do
Mm,
feel alone. I came back to Chicago and my friends are busy with work and their own families, or they're at that. Most people at my, because I'm 29, and if I have friends that are plus or minus 5 or 6 years, some of them they're just getting out of
married or
college and going to their first
mhm,
real big job, or yeah, they're getting married, or they're buying
mhm,
houses, or they're having their first or even second kid at this point. And here I am, a single eligible bachelor in Chicago that works a job, has my own money, and working on myself, but everybody else is at that point in their life, and especially during COVID too. And so while I'm trying to do all this stuff by myself and be have personal responsibilities so that the people outside of my own domain also remain safe, and
mhm,
we take care of those people who maybe can't take care of themselves um,
mhm.
during this health crisis. I find myself on some days very, very like alone and sad, and I have to learn to live with that. Right,
Yeah.
that's just something that you have to understand, that there's going to be times when you are alone, and you have to learn to be okay with the quiet echoes of your own existence.
Oh, that's so powerful. Thank you for sharing that, for being vulnerable. I'm also hearing solitude, though, right? Like the fine line between being alone, but also being in solitude,
Yeah.
maybe.
And I think that comes from a place, I think walking that line and it being solitude versus being alone comes from an understanding, and then understanding your own worth and having a sense of self. So,
Yeah.
I mean, for the last 4 or 5 months, I've really been good about being able to just pick up a book and read,
Yeah.
and enjoy that, or go grab myself dinner and listen to a book, like an audiobook if I can't read, if my hands are preoccupied eating or something, or watching a movie that I haven't watched in a long time, or something new, or catching up on anime, because let's be real,
Yeah.
anime is great, or
Yeah.
but whatever the case may be, I have had more success this year than I ever had of being able to do things by myself.
Mm,
And yes, I'm alone, but I think it's more of me embracing, solitude, and the positives of being alone and what it has to offer. Um,
yeah.
but then also
Yeah.
though too of letting it teach me, um,
Mm,
not to become codependent when
yeah.
somebody great comes along, or a friend or a potential partner.
hmm
But then though too, um, knowing what I expect and will accept from those people when they do come and share their realm of existence with me.
Yeah. Wow. 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 So many good gems, good nuggets. Um, I was gonna
2020
say
has been a
something.
year. Go ahead.
I think I was going to say that like this is also partly one of the biggest reasons why you wanted to start at this project, to
Yeah.
build community around people who, are, like need the resources around mental health and certain diagnosis, or like disorders, but also just like building community around people who want to know themselves better, grow, self-actualize. So in some ways, you're not alone. You
You're
have
not.
community.
You do.
Yeah.
And this isn't directed at any one person. I've just heard this a lot over the course of my entire life. I've heard people say, "I'm just going to do it alone," and I've said it
Mm-hmm.
myself, right? But I want to say this loudly and shout it from the rooftops so that everybody can hear. You are not brought into this world alone. Two people come together to bring you into this world, right? And when you're brought into this world, there is whether it's a small thing and you have a midwife and a small group of family, or if you're at a hospital and there's a surgeon and there's nurses, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You're not alone.
Mm-hmm.
When you're going through your adolescence and your youth, and you're at school and you have peers, you're not alone.
Mm-hmm.
You don't
Mm-hmm.
you don't learn to speak on your own. Who teaches you your language? Did you make up your language, or did you learn it from somebody else? You're not alone. When you're in high
Yeah.
school, when you're an adult, you know, if you have a rough day and pick up the phone and you want to talk to your family, you want to be around your family, you're not alone. You're never in this world doing anything alone. If you are a member of faith, right? And for the people here who practice any of the three major Abrahamic religions, hello, if you have a relationship with God, you're technically not alone, right? Because
Yeah.
if you do have this unwavering and unshakable belief that there is a higher power there that is watching over this world, if you believe that your loved ones are there in heaven watching over you, are you truly alone?
Love is all around you.
Yeah.
You are supported all around you.
Yeah.
I think loneliness is, we have this chat and we talk about this one video where it says loneliness is one of the leading causes of death now in this country.
Did you share that with me, or did I share that with you?
You shared it with me.
The Kurzgesagt video or something like that.
Oh wait, hold on. Siri just started to talk for some reason.
The Kurzgesagt video or whatever. It's the animated one, right? Yeah. It's
Yep.
such a great and powerful video to really understand what it means to be lonely.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And we definitely want to talk more about that topic. Maybe another video, another time.
Yeah, I'm down for that.
Yeah, yeah. Where do you want to go from here?
I think really we've said all we can say. I mean, did you have any more questions for me?
Um, I think the biggest one is just um, how else can your community support you or someone who has ADHD? But we've covered that in some ways. So if there's anything else that you want to add?
I think just by having an understanding of what ADHD or ADD means, if you see somebody who has trouble focusing or has trouble staying on task, just understanding that maybe that's outside of their control at that moment. But then other things though too, they may seem a little awkward, they may seem unapproachable. Just if you break down that barrier and you have an open and honest discussion, and you're open to what they tell you, and you're open to receive that information, I think that's the biggest thing. I don't really have anything set up as far as donating to ADHD research or ADD research. But obviously, if it's something that's near and dear to you, or if you have a loved one and you feel like you want to do that, I'm sure there's plenty of resources. If you just Google ADHD or ADD research foundations, you can give. That may be something I set up in the future where people can give. One thing I do want to say though is in 24 hours, when this is finished on Twitch and we upload it to YouTube, or if you're watching this on YouTube now, you can go into the description of the YouTube video and find a Google document with all of the research that I've done. And maybe if, the questions that Haley, that you asked me, I can type those up into a text format and answer them. They may not be the exact same answers, but they'll have the same spirit. I can put those in the Google document as well. And then that way, anybody who's watching this over on YouTube does have that resource available to go look at medical journals and WebMD and information from certified professionals in the medical field. Since we're just two people who are talking about these things, you'll have those available to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Wow. Dude, what a great combo.
Oh yeah, it was so great. I'm gonna go ahead. I'm gonna end stream here.
Okay.
And I appreciate everybody who stopped by and talked. Always, I appreciate you stopping and giving your opinions and your thoughts. I mean, it means a lot that you came in and you said what you said, Haley. I appreciate you taking the time out of your day on a
Of
beautiful,
course.
cold Saturday. Well, it might not be cold for you, but it is for me. Saturday to come and talk to me and ask me some questions and kind of give
Yeah.
your your experiences with your brother and his ADHD. I think it was massive to see it on from both sides of the coin, where you were able to
Mhm.
recognize, and then you can recognize those things now in other people. I think it's super helpful.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for having me on, and I'm happy to facilitate these conversations anytime.
Yep. All right, guys, take it easy.